So about 2 weeks ago, I released Drillbit's first devlog where I talked about some of the movement abilities that I've done so far, but I never really got into talking about the game's overarching mechanics. I think I mentioned that it was a roguelite with a T in passing, but that doesn't really mean much, does it? Basically, every indie game is a roguelike at this point, and there's so many ways to interpret this genre that today it's kind of only really associated with the idea of having randomness be a major factor in the game's mechanics. We see this in how Risk of Rain has its randomized items, Hades with its boons or buffs, Slay the Spire with its cards, Dead Cells with its weapons, Binding of Isaac with its equipment, Crypt of the Necrodancer with its dungeons and items, and the list goes on. I sincerely think that we've only scratched the surface though, with regards to what can actually be done with the genre, or at least the idea of randomization. Lately, I've been severely enamored by this certain take of the roguelike genre that I've mostly only found in randomizers. What's randomizer, you may ask? Well, there are also many interpretations of randomizers, but essentially what they are mods for existing games that randomizes a certain aspect of the game that was previously entirely linear, or basically not random. To give a few quick examples, we can reference the Pokemon series, as it has some of the most popular examples of randomizers, like the Wild Encounters Rando, where the Pokemon that spawn in the wild is randomized with basically every other Pokemon in the game, so you can encounter Arceus or something on the grass, or the Loading Zone Rando, where doors will take you to an entirely randomized location. So entering a Pokemon Center can send you straight to the Elite Four, and the list goes on. But the randomizer that has piqued my interest the most is the Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix Garden of Assemblage randomizer, created by Sonic Shadow Silver, but also helped a lot with the rest of the KH2 community, like with the trackers and the hints and so on. But the premise of this randomizer is that it randomizes every single reward in the game, like level up rewards, chests, battle rewards, and so on. But one of the most crucial parts of the mod is that it reframes how the game is played. Instead of doing it linearly, going through KH2's worlds in the order of the story, like you normally would in a regular playthrough, it instead places us in a sort of hub area, the Garden of Assemblage, a place in the game that has 15 doors. Each of these doors are assigned to a specific world in the game, and this hub area allows us to enter and complete the worlds in any order that we choose. Now, for the goal of the mod is to find 3 items, the proofs, which are mixed into the pool of randomized things. Once you get these items, you gain access to fighting the final boss of the game, and hence finishing a run. So your goal basically is to go through all of the worlds, try to see where the proofs are, and if you get the proofs, all 3 proofs, you can then fight the final boss and then finish the game. The great thing about this mod is that KH2's set of challenges have long been mastered by the players. There's already a community that has formed a lot of information around this game. We know what skills or items are useful against certain battles or certain boss fights. We know which movement abilities allow us to access normally unreachable areas, and we know what abilities we'd need to maximize experience gain in specific areas, and so much more. This is the aspect of the mod that I intend to apply for my game. If you haven't played the Rando, or KH2 specifically, I want to give some examples of what exactly I mean. In this run I did the other day, I entered the 100-acre wood, the Winnie the Pooh world, and found the final form in one of these chests. Now, this is a crucial moment that will depend on what my knowledge of the game is. Here's a list of things that you need to know about final form. First, it is one of the strongest form changes, drive forms, or power-ups in the entire game. Now, each of these drive forms, each of them have a specific way that they are leveled up. And leveling them up gives you a randomized rewards, as well as extending the time that you can use them. Final form in particular levels up from killing the nobody enemies, the nobody enemy type, the nobodies. They're called nobodies. Kingdom Hearts 2 is weird. With these pieces of knowledge in my mind, I have now created a plan. a path that I'm going to take in order to maximize the fact that I got final form this early. So what did I do? I went straight to Hollow Bastion, since this is where we can find nobodies pretty easy to beat nobodies. Particularly also in the early areas, there's some forced fights where you fight them. So we can get some levels for final form. Additionally, doing Hollow Bastion starts giving us access to some areas in the game that give us a ton of chests and rewards. At some point further into Hollow Bastion, there are also some bosses that are extremely susceptible to the final form. If you know anything about KH2 speedruns, particularly the super boss ones, we all know what happens when we use final form, particularly final form Faraga. Now, I have found myself in a situation where having this set of game knowledge has given me a ton of rewards. Let's try another example. Let's try to keep it simpler, you know? After some incursions to maximize getting that final form early, I have now found myself with a ton of new abilities, some of which include Blizzard. We all know Blizzard. Blizzard's a pretty crucial magic ability, particularly in the KH2 Randomizer. Why? Since it allows me to fight the pirate enemies in the world Port Royal much more easily. Normally, without magic, these fights are significantly harder. These pirate enemies have these guns and projectiles and bombs that can very easily one-shot you if you're not being careful, especially in higher difficulties, which most players tend to play in for the rando. Like we usually play in critical because it's the most fun. But with our best friend Blizzara that we've gotten from our incursions with that early final form, we now have the ability to freeze them. And if you have a high enough magic stat, which is also randomized by the way, you can just outright one-shot them. This allows us to breeze through the entire world all the way up to the boss, giving us a bunch of easy rewards, or at least doable rewards. Now again, we have found ourselves in a situation where the knowledge that we have this time about the enemies and how they interact with magic and Blizzard, since I know this, the game has rewarded me with a bunch of great rewards. This is the feeling that I want to capture in my game. Now, I know it does feel like an incredibly daunting task to be able to set up this knowledge puzzle for your game. This does require a good amount of game and level design, a good quality of game and level design, but I just can't shake off this desire to make a game like this. Now I know there's this one big problem rather, with trying to create a game around this concept. My game is not a mod. It's not a mod of a pre-existing game. There's no pre-existing players. There's no pre-existing community that has formed the collection of information around the meta of my game. So this is one of my main dilemmas around designing Drillbit around this concept. I can't just willy-nilly take inspiration from mods, you know? I need to find some way to organically make the player gain the knowledge that I need them to know so they can get to the fun part of logic solving a randomized run. And this is where another source of inspiration comes in. The only other non-modded game that I've found that does something similar to this rando is Cadence of Hyrule, which is the Legend of Zelda spin-off of Crypt of the Necrodancer, but it's developed by the same team of Crypt. It provides all of the same beats as the Kingdom Hearts 2 randomizer in Cadence of Hyrule's story mode, but instead of a hub area with a bunch of doors, it has a randomly generated version of Hyrule, the open world, per playthrough, where all the key items like the hookshot, bow and arrow, bombs, and so on are randomly placed in the map in chests or in randomly placed dungeons. It also has a similar goal of getting the proofs, but in this case it's the 4 instruments to gain access to the final dungeon and consequently the final boss. So it has the same goal basically as KH2 Randomizer. So one thing that Cadence of Hyrule really does well is organically teaching the player that game knowledge, and that's exactly what I need, right? So I need to take inspiration from this game and how they did it. So how did they do it? Well, basically they allowed experimentation. The game makes you wonder, oh, I got this equipment called the Power Glove. Oh, it allows me to pick up objects. What exactly can I lift with it, you know? Can I lift this rock? Oh, I can. Can I lift this box? Oh, I also can. Can I lift this ice block? Oh, I also can. And yes, each of these things I just mentioned all provide that feeling that I was talking about a while ago. Since once you figure out that you can use these things to solve a puzzle or skip an area, you start applying logic to the game. You start pathing out your playthroughs. You start getting better at knowing what you need to do to maximize your time in the game. That knowledge that you can lift the rock, now you can place this rock anywhere you need to create an extra platform. This knowledge that you can lift this box, a normally knowledge-based puzzle, becomes very trivial since you can just take the boxes away. You see, these ice blocks, normally I have to go through this entire section of the dungeon, but now I can just go straight to the end since I can pick up these blocks. And I think it's this aspect of Cadence of Hyrule that I really need to capture to be able to encourage experimentation and creativity. But man, I gonna have to become next level in game and level design first in order to accomplish that. And that's where time comes in, you know. Hopefully I get there over time. I'll get there through experimentation as well. So I've spent the last few weeks though trying to come up with a setting or a format that allows me to do this in my game, in Drillbit. And for the longest time, I failed to come up with an idea that properly captures this aspect. I couldn't come up with a world. I couldn't come up with a format. I couldn't come up with a setting to put my puzzles in to actually implement this idea of mine. But after a while, I stopped trying to brute force my way through coming up with an idea and decided to break down what I really needed. I did it a bit backwards, where instead of coming up with the setting first, I decided to list out, oh, what kind of puzzles did I need? And in order to do that, I listed some challenges and problems and the corresponding solutions that I would have for them. This cleared out a lot of the problems I needed, and now a lot of ideas regarding level design have started to flow in. Here's how I listed it. I listed out all of the current abilities and skills that I have planned and programmed into the game, like the movement abilities from the last devlog and some combat skills that I intend to add in. I broke down what each of these things were able to address. For example, we can compare the jump to our air dash. The jump particularly solves the problem of verticality, vertical movement, while the air dash solves the problem of needing horizontal movement or a sudden burst movement option. Now, what kind of challenges can we make with these problems? For verticality, of course, we can have some platformer over some cliffs or big stairs. Additionally, we can have enemies that make the ground shake, deal an area of effect on the ground, requiring the player to jump. The jump now is a solution for a challenge. Now for the horizontal movement, we can have platforming over large gaps, going across moving platforms. For combat, in terms of horizontal movement, we can have enemies that shoot lasers in a vertical pattern, or an enemy that charges up an explosion requiring you to move away very quickly. Now we have a challenge that the air dash can solve. It's simple puzzles like these that I have been able to come up with regarding the current kit that my player will be able to have. And now all it comes down to is placing these enemies in a strategic location. Locations where the players are able to make a decision. Something like, oh, I finally have a level 2 jump. Now I can go to this area to fight the boss that's constantly making the ground shake. Or maybe something like, oh, I finally have an air dash. Now I can go safely over this huge canyon to get a bunch of chests and rewards. Now I finally have a clearer idea of how I need to design the game. It's these eureka moments that I sincerely love about game design. These moments where a vision for a game becomes clearer and clearer, and hopefully leading to a game that has a strong identity and, of course, good gameplay. That's about it for this video. I'll try to see if the weekly upload schedule is still doable, given that uni is starting this 21st, or this Monday, in a few days, basically. For next devlog, I plan to show some good progress, so I'm probably going to release that after some other video between this one and that one, to allow me to make quite a bit more progress, to show you guys, on top of trying to figure out working schedule to manage both school and making videos and games. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.